Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Working Wealth Podcast. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Trevor.
And we are here to bring you some more educational content around a very important topic that is, I feel like it's just coming up every single week for us with clients that are growing their families. My wife and I have had 2 kids in the past few years. Just really the importance and the strategy behind how do we save for our kids' future.
Yep.
Right. So before we jump in, though, like always, if you haven't watched our last couple episodes, go back, watch them, like, share, give us some ratings, give us some feedback on how we can make this better for you guys, because we're just doing this for y'all. We want you to be informed and educated as we go forward from here. So let's jump in, though. Saving for kids. Man, controversial topic.
Yes, it is. And you're going to get 1,000 different perspectives from 1,000 different people.
Oh, yeah.
On how it should be done, when it should be done, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Should you do it?
Yeah.
You know, all those kind of things.
Yep.
So what I wanted to do today, just based on that, is just really kind of talk through a lot of the different options of how you can help, save for your kids' future. A common one people talk about is education, saving for their, higher education expenses, things like that. And realistically, I have this conversation so often that it feels like we should just record a podcast about it and then be able to send this episode to people. So,
which, granted, Patrick, we're doing it right now.
Yeah. So that's why we're here today to do this.
Yep.
So thinking about saving for kids, right? There are a lot of different mechanisms. You have things like just a regular brokerage account, like a taxable investment account. You have education-focused accounts, which would be your 529 savings plans. There are also, by the way, 529 QTPs, that's qualified tuition programs. A lot of those are kind of phased out. So we're not even going to talk about that stuff. Like most states don't even offer them anymore. But you have 529 savings plans. You have the Coverdell ESA or educational savings account. You have UGMAs and UTMAs. You have I'm going to call them the OBBBA accounts, right? Say that 1,000 times fast, right? Or the Trump accounts, MAGA accounts. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But how do you decide the right way to do it?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of, in my mind, should start with the question of should you save for your kids?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to dive too deep into those waters because it's very controversial and a lot of different opinions there. I'll say that I'm saving for my kids, right? Because we have specific goals and we have certain things that we want to have capital set aside for.
Yeah.
But it's, just to be transparent, it's not saving for them to be able to buy a house down the road. It's not saving for them to start a business necessarily. Like we've been saving for, good education in their early years. Like we want to have them a good foundation, whether that's private school or other things we do. It's making sure that we set them up for a good success at the beginning and then train them up to be, good, well-adjusted young adults down the road.
Absolutely.
And if there's resources for other things down the road and our goals change, then we can always pivot there, But just to kind of, start off, saving for kids, where would you say is the best place? Like as clients reach out, commonly we kind of start with some baseline questions. What would you say is the best starting point to think about with this topic?
Gosh, it's such a broad topic and people have different perspectives like we were talking about. I really think that the number one thing that you've got to look at is when you're going to need this money. So, are you going to need it in 10 years? Are you going to need it in 2 years? Are you going to need it in 18 years? Are you going to need it in 25 years? The timeline and what you need the money for, those are the 2 biggest identifiers and key points that I really like to dive into with people because we've got to know specifically what the money is going to be used for and when it's going to be needed. Yeah. When we have those 2 questions answered, we can really kind of tailor which strategy we use for that individual person.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the time and the purpose determines the place.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, gotcha. So thinking about that, right, let's actually talk about the shorter term option because I think that's probably the most straightforward one that a lot of people, they kind of struggle with. Well, I want to do something and I wanted to do something good with the money, but I don't want it to just sit in a savings account, right? So if somebody has, say, like 2 to 3 years time horizon for when they want to use the money, what's the general recommendation we want to use for that?
We want to be pretty conservative in that case when the timeline is that short. We love high yield savings accounts. And Patrick, I know you and I both personally use high yield savings accounts. You're going to get a guaranteed, depends on the market obviously, but 2 to 4%, 2 to 5% rate of return on that money. And it's going to be stable. It's going to be liquid. It's going to be available the second you need it. So for those really short timelines, we like having your money in a liquid position, secure. You're not going to lose a bunch if the market dips, the stock market dips. You're going to get that kind of guaranteed interest, but it's not sitting in your traditional big bank savings account, losing money to inflation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's really like with really any kind of savings goal or like liquidity goal down the road, if you don't have at least 3 to 4 years to let it grow and absorb any kind of volatility, just put it in a savings account.
Yep.
Like if you really want some extra benefit or security, like go buy a CD, something like that. But at the end of the day, if it's a short-term need and you need liquidity, but you want to get something better than the 0.01% or 0.05% that your big banks are giving, high yield savings. Understanding that rate does fluctuate, right? It's not directly tied to the federal funds rate, but it's pretty close to it. The bank I started with in 2018, had the highest high yield savings account rate at the time. It was 2.3%. I was like, man, this is a lot better than 0.01 I was getting from the big guys. Yeah. And that went up a little bit, and then it went down to 0.5%, which was still like 50 times the national average, right? And then it went up to 5%, and now it's back down in the 3 range, right?
So it's going to fluctuate a ton, but the good thing is it's always going to be more than a big bank percentage of return, right? And it's going to be stable. Like you're never going to lose money in that account.
Right. The only way you lose it is you take it out.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
So, so that's the short term, right? So what if we're thinking about like longer term? Like we have longer term needs. The next question outside of timeline, or let's say if there is a longer time, like my thought is we'll look at investing.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you're investing and you're just being super aggressive, but you're at least putting it into work, like buying assets that have an opportunity for better growth potential. Yep. And then the next question after the time is, what is the purpose of these dollars? So most common purposes we see for people is it's either education, like that's the most common topic because we've all been snubbed and, had one taken over on us about the whole education system in the past 30 years. So saving for education expenses could be helping your kids with buying a house down the road. That's a common thing we're starting to hear more and more of.
Weddings, we hear
those. Or just in general, like having money that regardless of where the child goes and what their plan is, just having flexibility.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? So in my mind, like it's good to talk about the education piece first because there's some limited options there, and then we can talk about more flexible options. Yeah. So education, right? The landscape of education savings. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit jaded on this because I think there's a lot of waste in college. I think there's a lot of degree programs and career paths that really don't require a degree. And I think we're starting to see that shift in our culture as a whole, getting back to more trade focus, getting back to more like using our hands and actually developing skills rather than having a piece of paper that says we have some kind of knowledge base, right? Yep. We're actually getting to the point where people can be more utilitarian and actually work to generate value for other people versus saying that my value is based on some piece of paper, right? I personally love that. And I still think there's a lot of need for college and university programs. This is my opinion, right? Like I have an engineering degree. You have an engineering degree, right? Doctors, lawyers, anyone who has like specialized education needs, 100%, that's important. But if we think about that, like education, there's even some different tiers of the education savings purpose. You have higher education, college, university, trade school, apprenticeships, things like that. And then you have like K through 12 education. right?
Which a lot of parents are starting to opt into paid K through 12 education.
Yeah.
You know, as obviously depends on where you live, the kind of school districts that you have, you know, available to you and your children. But I think a lot of parents now are opting for private education, you know, or charter school, or you know, some other alternative that costs more than what a public education costs. So this is where a lot of these accounts can come into play, and we've seen a lot of recent rule changes with some of these accounts that open the flexibility up to actually fund part of that K through 12 education.
Yeah.
So that is a definite positive.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking about the account types that are out there, I'll go through a couple of them just kind of briefly because we really don't see them used nearly as much anymore because of the rule changes and expansions of uses for the other ones. But like classically, we talk about the UGMA and UTMA accounts. So UGMA is the Uniform Gift to Minors Act. UTMA is the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act. You can kind of like throw UGMA away for all intents and purposes today because I think South Carolina was the last state to actually adopt the UTMA rules, and that was a couple years ago at this point in time. But it's like those are accounts, though, like the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act accounts. Those are accounts that you put money in after tax. There's no limit on how much can go into it. And the taxation of earnings inside the account, not just like value increase, but like actual earnings, dividends, capital gains, sales of assets for profit, things like that. There's a limit on like the first, I think it's around $1,100 or so, first $1,100 of earnings, tax-free, next $1,100 taxed at like a preferred tax rate. And then like anything above that, earnings-wise, is taxed at the parents' tax rates. The catch on that is like any money that goes in there in the eyes of the IRS is a qualified gift. Like you can't put that money in there for your child and then take that money back out and use it for your own purposes. That money has to be used for the child. And part of that additional catch there is once the money's in there and it has to be in that account for that child's purposes, you can take it out before they reach the age of majority, which in most states is 21. You can take it out to use for their purposes. But if you leave it in and there's still a balance when they reach that trigger age called the age of majority, now that account has to be reclassified as an account owned by the child, right? A lot of parents don't like that because there's really, like on the front side, there's not a whole lot of tax benefits. There's some tax benefit, but not a lot. But there's the other side of it is, you know, when the kid reaches 18 or 21, depending on the state, let's say there's $20,000 in that account. Most parents we talk to say, man, if I had $20,000 when I was that age, I'd be doing some bad stuff. We don't want to put ourselves in that situation. Right?
Absolutely.
Another thing that in my mind kind of rules out making contributions to these accounts today is any of those assets in those accounts are viewed as the child's asset when you go to do your financial aid application under the FAFSA program.
So that's directly going to impact how much financial aid they can get, and it's going to kind of contribute to the overall financial picture that they have.
And that's not saying like financial aid for the sake of, you know, I want to show less money so I can get more loans. That does impact your ability to get scholarships and, you know, things like that from different universities and different colleges. So that's like the custodial UGMA, UTMA. I'm going to just throw this one over here for now, right?
I agree.
The second one to talk about is the Coverdell ESA, right? I would say like 20 years ago, this was the jam.
It was the 529 of 20 years ago.
Before 529s basically had all the same features plus more.
Right? Exactly.
On that note, tax laws have changed, I think, 5 times in the past 4 years, or 6 times in the past 5 years, that kind of thing. You know, starting back with the Secure Act in 2019, and then we had like CARES Act and Secure 2 and CARES 2, and you had all these other things that have changed.
Now we're going to OBBBA. I mean, it's going to continue to change.
And so like everything we talk about today is based on what is today, right? Things will fluctuate and adjust over time. But thinking about the Coverdell, you know, this was the account. You could put money in, no tax deduction for contributions going in. It did grow tax-free for education purposes. You could use that for, you know, K through 12 as well as higher education, but there were some limitations. right?
$2,000 limit per year. That's
Two
probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, $2,000 limit per year today, right? Like that's
Yeah.
indexed up over time.
Yep.
Also income caps, right? If you were higher earning family, you couldn't put money in there, right? You'd phase out just like Roth contributions and other things. So not very versatile today, right? Compare that or contrast that with 529 plans. We used to love those accounts because 529 plans are typically state administered or state-based programs with a certain mutual fund company. And there were more restrictions, but also like the ESA, you could be a lot more flexible around your investments. 529 is very limited, kind of like a 401k plan.
Yeah.
It's a menu of options to choose from, and you're stuck with that menu of options, right? Nowadays, though, like a lot of limitations with the ESA versus the 529 because the 529 savings plan allows you to use it for all the same purposes. There's no income cap on being able to make contributions. You can, depending on your state of residence, get state tax deductions from making contributions. South Carolina is one of the best ones for that. And a lot of platforms have improved their investment options, like the Future Scholar program in South Carolina. They've done an overhaul on the investment options in the past, since I've been in business, the past 8 years. Yeah. And it's actually got some pretty good options, right? So we can use that account to put money away, get a state tax deduction, and also have it grow tax-free for education purposes down the road.
Gives you a lot more versatility, a lot more investment opportunities, and they've just recently added those rules where you can actually use it for K through 12 education like we were talking about. So traditionally it was just for higher ed, trade school, college, things like that. But now they've kind of broadened those use cases for it. And if you've got a kid that you want to put through private education from kindergarten through 12th grade, you can actually take a certain dollar amount, depends on your state, depends on the year. So I'm not going to give a specific number, but essentially you can take part of their education costs and use 529 funds to take care of that.
Yeah, and I'll actually throw some numbers out today based on where we are today. So the law, when they allowed you to use that money from 529 for like K through 12 was $10,000 initially. Starting next year, we're recording in 2025. So in January 2026, you can actually use $20,000 per year for those K through 12 education benefits or costs per beneficiary. That's important because if you can get a state tax deduction for contributions, you can put money in, get your state tax deduction, wait the appropriate amount of time based on the state's your requirements, and then pull that money back out to pay for tuition directly or reimburse yourself for tuition directly. So that's stuff that we talk a lot about with clients is even if you don't have money already sitting in a 529 plan, if you're sending your kids to private school, well, do your tuition payments into the program, get your state tax deduction, and then pull it out to pay for those K through 12 expenses.
Exactly. Get the tax deduction by putting the money into the 529, and then you can pull it out after the vesting requirements are satisfied and get the tax deduction. Basically like getting a discount on the bill.
Yeah, so I think the max state tax rate in South Carolina is between 6 and 6.5%. Let's call it 6%.
I think it's 6.2 right now, but
because it's phasing down, right? Each year.
They're working it down, which is great for us. But
exactly.
I think it's 6.2 or 6.3% right now. At the top rate.
Let's just do 6 for easy math, right? If the K through 12 tuition is $10,000 for the year, and I put $10,000 into the plan, I save $600 on my state taxes by doing that for something I'm already going to spend the money for, which is great. Something else that I think is really cool and versatile about the 529 program, and this is what I've helped a lot of clients do in the past few years, is if you have student loans, you can use up to $10,000 per person per lifetime from a 529 plan to put towards qualified federal student loans. So again, even if you don't have the money inside a 529 already, we've helped a lot of clients open the 529, put 10 grand or whatever that balance up to $10,000 is into the 529 account, wait the 14 or 30 days, take it back out, right? Sitting in a money market in the meantime, so there's not investment risk associated with it.
Stable value.
Take it back out, pay the student loans. Well, you just got in this case, like a 6% discount on paying your student loans, right? We love that.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a small strategy piece, right, to help you take advantage of that opportunity. So there's a lot of versatility. Some of the cool things, too, starting in 2026 is you have the $20,000 threshold for K through 12 education. You can also use it for expanded expenses on trade schools and apprenticeships, which you've had some of that in the past few years, but it's expanded now. And here's the cool thing, for professional certifications, you
This
can use
directly
it.
applies to our world, Patrick.
Oh yeah, I spend, I don't know, at least $5,000, if not close to $10,000 a year on continuing education and certifications and registrations and all that kind of stuff. You bet your bippy, I'm going to be reimbursing myself through a 529 program to save on all that stuff, right? Because those are regular like business associated expenses that are tied with my professional education and continuing ed stuff. Yeah, I'm going to use that, right? Because that's another tax deduction I can get a benefit for.
Well, I think that's
from there.
One of the common misnomers about 529 plans. We always think of them as like, oh, well, these are for children. But they're not always just for children. They're for higher education. They're for education purposes.
Yeah.
So you as an adult can still utilize a 529 in your plan. For anyone out there who's going to college a little bit later in life, things like that, you can use 529s to your advantage.
Yeah. And there are rules, right?
Yeah,
like state tax deductions are based on the state you live in, that kind of stuff. There's also some cool things around college funding, not to just take it down this path because we're talking about saving in general for kids, like how to help them save, but like grandparent-owned 529s don't impact FAFSA filings in a negative fashion like parent-owned do. There's some other cool nuances there. And even like if, let's say you're a grandparent, you live in South Carolina and your grandkids live in Tennessee, right? Well, you could still open a 529 in South Carolina because you're a state resident here and fund it and get your tax deduction for making that contribution. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Absolutely.
That being said, great tool for education purposes, right? If you don't have the purpose piece just being education, there are rules around how you can take that money out and how you're taxed for not using it for education purposes. The most common thing, put it in for education, take it out for education. It's tax-free, potentially tax deductible going in. Best of both worlds, right? New rules as of a couple of years ago, if you have money left in a 529 for a beneficiary and you don't have education expenses to satisfy that distribution, right? We can now roll that money over into a Roth IRA and get additional tax-free growth for retirement. Now, some nuance, account had to be open for 15 years. You had to have the funding in there for at least 5 years. And you can only do that rollover from 529 to Roth if the child or the beneficiary in this case has earned income, qualifying compensation to do that rollover over time. But that's another way too, is like, if I start a 529 for my kid and I live in a state that's tax deductible for the contribution, tax deductible going in, grow tax-free, don't use it all for education. Now I roll that again tax-free into a Roth to grow tax-free for the future. Holy cow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's pretty cool, right?
I think one of the pieces that we look at a lot with clients is you don't want to dramatically overfund a 529.
Yeah, you
right?
definitely
because
don't.
While we do have that Roth IRA rollover rule, which is incredible, we love that, it's subject to the annual limits for those rollovers.
And only for 5 years worth, right?
Exactly.
So like right now, or in 2025, it was $35,000. We just found out IRAs are going up next year to $7,500. So that'll be indexed up. But yeah, it's 5 years worth. And you can't roll money from there into a Roth to the limit and then also fully fund a Roth. Like that is in lieu of using cash from elsewhere.
It's cumulative. It counts for your entire annual limit for that year. So it's definitely something, we don't want to see people with $100,000 over what they needed for education expenses in a 529 because that's really going to kind of handcuff them to that plan and not allow them to have that versatility and that flexibility to roll those funds into something that's a little bit more usable for other expenses.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of those other like exit plans, right? So you can change the beneficiary. There's a whole list of like what types of family members, associated family, like relatives you can change it to, cousins, kids, adopted kids, grandkids, all that kind of stuff. You can change that so you could use that money for the next generation or another family member. If you have scholarships, let's say I have $10,000 in scholarships and I have $20,000 in the account, I'll take $10,000 out to offset the scholarship dollars that I receive. You avoid a 10% non-qualified distribution tax penalty, but you would still be taxed on the growth in that case. And that's ordinary income tax rates, not capital gains. So that's another way, like offset with scholarships. You can just take money out for whatever, right? But that's going to be 10% penalty on the growth plus the ordinary income taxes on the growth. I think kind of one of the things a lot of people miss is you can also use this for other types of expenses, not just tuition and like on-campus housing. You can use this for off-campus housing up to the extent of what the on-campus housing would cost and like what a meal plan would cost for being on campus.
A lot of different rules in there, but there are some flexible ways that you can spend that for education outside of textbooks, tuition, all those kind of things.
Yep. Exactly. And there are also some nuances around like what kind of electronic equipment you can use it for. It's not everything, right? It's a lot of things, but not everything out there. So those are some really important things to keep track of and keep in terms of the nuance. But I would say like if we're thinking we want to have money set aside for education, that is going to be your best tool for tax benefits.
Totally agreed.
If you don't want to have money set aside just for education, this is where the next thing on the list really comes into play, which in my mind is just a regular old taxable brokerage account.
Yep.
Plain Jane, the original tried and true investment account. I put money in. It's after tax contribution today, so I get no benefit of putting it in there like on my return right now. But as it grows, I'm only going to pay potentially long-term or short-term capital gains tax rates based on how much it grows and when I withdraw money from that account over time.
Absolutely.
This is, Dave Ramsey calls this the bridge account or plain Jane mutual fund account. You can have a lot of different types of investments inside of it, but the key is there's no tax deferral or like tax incentive. It's just regular old income tax rates. But if you hold the assets for more than 12 months, you can have a reduced capital gains tax bracket associated.
And with these accounts, you have maximum flexibility with the funds.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of reasons I love this is the flexibility. A lot of times for parents that you want that flexibility, maybe we do like some money to a 529 and some money to a brokerage account, which again can be used for, weddings, starting a business, home down payment. You could also take money out of that account and then funnel it through a 529 like we talked about before to pay for and like cash flow expenses. That's a great feature we talk about with people is like maybe generate some capital gains over here, take the money, funnel it through to pay the tuition. You just offset the taxes a little bit, right? Like state tax deduction here when you're generating tax liability over here. Also, quick pause, like consult with your CPA, your tax professional. We're not giving tax advice. But these are kinds of strategies you can look at using for your personal situation. The other thing I love about that is it's not like a custodial account the way we set them up where the child owns it at a certain age. We set them up as typically like an individual owned by a parent or jointly owned by the parents or like grandparents to where the adult, who is the adult setting it up, still maintains and retains ownership and control over how those assets get used.
Legally, all those funds are their funds. Whoever opens the account, it's their funds. So they can dictate where those dollars go, when they go, and how they're used.
Yeah. And so that does mean like because it's your fund, if there are tax implications, it falls in your tax return. However, you don't have a 19-year-old with $100,000 making potentially questionable decisions. I know little Johnny, little Susie, they're perfect angels. You raised them right. I get it. I'm dealing with that too. But
that shiny truck in the lot looks really good though, Patrick.
Love a good 8-inch lift, right? A little Carolina squat action going on. So it's just the reality of always being proactive, putting yourself in the driver's seat and the control of the financial situation and financial decisions we make over time. So like my personal preference for a lot of situations, not every situation, but for a lot of situations, is if we have an inclination of education savings, some towards 529, and then anything else we want to save is like brokerage account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, every person's situation is different.
For sure.
The other piece of this, though, before we talk about the final account type, is how much should you save?
Yeah, and that's going to be a different. There's no way we can answer that right now. It is so dependent on your goals for your child, your child's goals. What you want to use the funds for, when you want to use them. It's really hard to dial in a specific number. Now, the good thing is we can kind of look at the expected cost. And we can help tailor a plan to give you kind of a guide of how much you should be putting away each month or each year while you're building that account up. So let's just say you need $20,000 for a wedding. and you've got 15 years to save, we can help you with that arithmetic, with that math, and help you save the right amount based on expected returns and all that kind of thing. But it is so nuanced and so dependent on your particular situation and what your goals are.
Yeah. And I'll add another component there is it's dependent on your level of discipline and stability, right?
Yep.
Because even with just like saving for education, the way we guide a lot of people is don't try to fund the whole thing. You don't know what scholarships are going to look like. You don't know what their decisions are going to look like. You don't know if they're even going to go to school. You don't know like what kind of program they're going to go into. So instead of trying to say, I need $163,789.73 16 and a half years from now, let's say I'm willing to commit $40,000 to this venture in terms of my contributions. And I'm going to do that over 16 years.
Yep.
Or I'm going to do that over the next 5 years and then let it grow to what it will grow to. We can use time value of money calculators, historical rates of return, to, like you said, to figure all that stuff out in terms of risk and investment allocation, all that kind of stuff. But instead of trying to solve the unknowable, let's just solve for the things we can control.
Yeah.
Like, I want to commit this much. Great. What that frees you up to do is like you've already set the plan in motion and in action. If we're also then doing everything else right with our financial plan, when we get to the point where they're in school, if we undershot it a little bit, but we still made sure to like save enough for retirement, maybe pay off our home, make other good financial decisions in the meantime. If I need to cash flow an extra $300 a month while they're in school, if I've done everything else right, I can help cash flow that.
Yep.
Right? You don't have to have everything solved today. And I think that's why a lot of times people kind of avoid doing financial planning because you feel like you have to have all the answers right now.
Yep.
We don't have all the answers. Like, we know a lot of things about this. We know a lot of rules and nuances and stuff like that. But we still get on Google. Like, oh, I think it's this, but let me double check, right? Like, we still have to do that because things do change and there's nuance.
And Patrick, I think this brings up a really good point. I know we're getting a little off topic here, but I think it goes without saying it's really important. And this is controversial for a lot of people, so please don't hear me wrong, folks out there.
Take him completely wrong.
It's all good. We really love to take Dave Ramsey's principle and preach that you've got to take care of your financial health before your kids. And that can be a really, really hard conversation to have because we want what's best for our kids. We want to, really help our kids get off on the right foot in their lives. But if we don't have our financial picture in place and our financial health in a good spot, our kids it's going to be to their detriment in the long run. Yeah. If we can't take care of ourselves, our kids are going to have to someday. And we would rather have the parents take care of their financial situation first to make sure they're in a good spot before they start helping their kids out.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go deeper on that, and I don't care if it's controversial. I'll just be honest. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 4.5-month-old at home. Your kids do what you do, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah,
like I've learned that very quickly. Is your kids will copy you. So if you are being irresponsible and you're not taking ownership in your financial situation, guess what? They're going to copy you because they don't know any better. And I'll give you a little bit of grace on this. Like, maybe you're irresponsible because nobody showed you what it was like to be responsible and to make good decisions and to like understand and try to learn, right? And this is not condemnation. It is not in any way condemnation, but it is just the truth, right? Like, if you didn't learn because your parents didn't know and they didn't know because their parents didn't know, and also because like the retirement landscape has changed in the past 60 years and because tools and resources and accounts and all this kind of stuff has shifted, like there's a lot of room for grace here. But I think that the reality is like you only can teach what you know.
Yeah.
And if you weren't taught it because they didn't know, and then you don't take an active effort to learn so you can then teach it, your kids are just going to follow in your footsteps. And this is how you have a situation of generations of families that never get ahead, generations of families that unless somebody pulls their head out of the sand and says like, no, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to learn and I'm going to change, it's just going to continue that cycle, right? I don't think that the generational poverty issues we have are because the system is trying to, hold one over on you. Yeah. A lot of it is just education, which is why we're doing this, right?
And discipline.
Discipline.
That's a huge thing as well.
The applied education, with wisdom, all those things, like that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Thank you for going there. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so important because people, we have clients, and people that we talk to every day that their heart is in the right place. They're so concerned about taking care of their kids, but maybe their situation isn't as good as it could be. And we're like, hey, you've got to focus on yourself and get yourself into a really good spot to break that chain in your family. Like, you be the example. You take care of everything you can take care of. Your kids will fall in line. Like you said, they will follow your lead. So if you take care of everything, they will also fall in line and take care of the things that they need to take care of.
Right.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
Raise them up the way they should go. Right. And that kind of carries with it the underlying assumption and truth that you're going to know the way to go.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, if you don't take that active effort to learn what is a better path and like apply that in yourself, there's no way they're going to learn it. So, but that's again, like a lot of the reason why we focus on education here. And we want to help people understand what to do and how to evaluate and make good decisions with what's available to them.
Absolutely.
So, great point. Yeah. Really, really good point. So, love to talk about this too. So, you know, give us some feedback, and we can get on a phone call and break it down. But so we talked about a lot of different options here. Definitely put on your oxygen mask before your kids, right? Because also, again, just if you don't show them how to do it and you're expecting them to be responsible enough to figure it out when you need them and you can't actually help them, this is not a winning solution.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, though, like one other account type, and this is a newer account type that has been also a little bit controversial, right? We had a sweeping tax bill signed into law on July 4th of this year, July 4th, 2025, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed by Trump on July 4th. And I think they're actually talking about changing the name of it officially.
Yeah,
because that's
you know how DC is, Patrick. It's a show for sure.
100%. Yeah, everything is trying to incite people to action.
Yep.
Right. So let's talk about, though, this new account type that has been created. And I want to say, to your point about DC, Congress passes laws. The president signs them into law. Like, Congress passes it, the bills, the president signs it into law. Then all the other departments have to figure out how to enforce and how to apply it, right? It's like we had sweeping changes to retirement accounts with the Secure Act in December of 2019. It was further enhanced and adjusted in December of 2022. The IRS did not finalize how things are enforced until July 18th of 2024.
Yep.
So everything we say here is subject to change. Everything we say here, this is based on information that has been published via IRS, White House, all that kind of stuff. But the new accounts are the Trump accounts, right? Or like the Trump's kids accounts or the MAGA accounts or whatever flavor you want to call them today. High level, what is a Trump account?
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of talk about these in the news, and there's a lot of just communication that is accurate, isn't accurate. It's all crazy. So I like how you preface this conversation with, these are the up-to-date rules, and we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. All this is subject to change. But Trump accounts are basically just another way to save for your children's expenses down the road. So they're investment accounts, they're retirement accounts that you can use to save for your children. And there are a lot of really kind of interesting new identifiers and pieces in them that are a little bit different than what we have traditionally and what we've had in the past. So they have different aspects to them that are a little bit more flexible, I would say. But it depends, once again, on your goal for the money and the timeline for the money.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of people that come in asking, hey, can I open up a Roth IRA for my 1-year-old? And the big caveat to IRAs is the child has to have earned income.
Right.
So that's a big thing. The Trump accounts are a little unique in the way that they're basically IRAs, IRA adjacent.
Yeah.
And the child doesn't need to have any earned income for people to contribute to them. So kind of a cool new thing. I think these will definitely have a place for a lot of people's strategies. And, really there are a lot of rules that we'll get into and break down, but your child doesn't need to have earned income, and you can contribute for their future into these accounts.
Yeah. So what's the age range of contributions? And then let's talk about the actual contribution amounts.
Yeah, absolutely. So these accounts, you're able to put in from age 1 until 17. So you've got basically 17 calendar years that you can contribute an annual amount up to the annual limit. That will change over time. It'll be inflation adjusted, but essentially you've got 17 years to put into these accounts. Once the child turns 18, contributions have to stop, and you'll no longer be able to put into the Trump account specifically.
Yeah. And then how much can be added to those accounts per
Yep.
year?
So currently it is a $5,000 annual limit.
Okay.
So essentially 17 years every year adjusted for inflation. Right now that number is $5,000. You can throw it in and have it grow.
Yeah, there's a big headline that's been going around like seed funding.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the rule about the seed funding?
Yeah, so the seed funding is unique. Basically, the bill states that if your child is born in the calendar years of 2025 through 2028, you will actually get $1,000 seed fund thrown into the account by a federal grant.
Yeah.
So kind of gives you a little bit of a kickstart on that account. And Patrick, you've got a child that was born this year, so should be taking advantage of that $1,000.
Yeah, whenever we can do it.
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
be doing it.
Very rarely does the government give us money in a constructive, good building block way. And I think this is one of the few exceptions that I'm actually not mad about.
Yeah. There's a trade-off of everything.
For sure, there is.
Yeah. There's definitely a trade-off. So, so $1,000 seed funding for any child born 2025 to 2028, right? It's tax-free contribution, so there's no impact on that. Anybody can put money into these accounts. It's like that $5,000 limit. It can be you. It could be your grandparents. It could be your employer can put in $2,500 right into these accounts for those children. Like any other kind of account, like 529s and otherwise, it's one beneficiary per account, right? So like for my oldest son, I have an account. For my youngest son, I'll have an account, and so on, kind of thing. Key thing of taxation, right? So it's not a tax deductible contribution like a traditional IRA or some 529s. It's an after-tax contribution, just like a Roth IRA or a brokerage account, right? But the earnings do grow tax deferred like an IRA, right? So like you don't have to pay tax on the earnings until you take money out. And that's an important thing too, is like withdrawals from these accounts. You can take withdrawals from the accounts of your contributions without tax and penalty, as far as it's been clarified so far.
Which is similar to a Roth IRA or...
But as soon as you touch earnings, it's taxable, right? But you can't take distributions out, again, based on what's been communicated and published, like until they're 18, right? So it's kind of like an extra Kickstarter for retirement. Put money in after tax, it's going to grow tax deferred, and then convert into an IRA. Again, some confusion around does it convert just into traditional versus Roth, because you have some after-tax and pre-tax basis inside this account. But you can convert it to an IRA, and then once they're 18 and it's converted into a retirement account, you have the same rules as other retirement accounts. Like you could take out maybe up to $10,000 for first-time home purchase. You have qualified like medical expense distributions, hardship, like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think that's important to note that this is not a traditional child savings account for expenses when they're young. Like this is a retirement Kickstarter account, essentially. So these funds, once they come out of that Trump account at age 18, they'll be rolled into an IRA or potentially a Roth IRA and IRA. We have no idea yet. The government is still figuring that out. But you're not going to be able to necessarily pull these funds out at age 18, penalty and tax-free, to pay for education. These are for retirement. And that's their intended purpose. Obviously, there is flexibility. There are certain rules with IRAs. You can pull funds out tax and penalty free, but they are by and large for retirement and giving your kids a kickstart on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then so with that though, like we said, a lot of things are in flux and subject to change. We've gotten this question from a handful of clients around like, well, hey, I want to open one of these accounts. How do we do it? Just like I said earlier, right? Laws get passed and then work gets started. We have not heard of any custodian, your custodian being a company where you can open an account. No custodians to date have determined when they will actually go live with these accounts because you have rules that have to be written, you have applications that have to be set up, you have administration and tax reporting that has to be established, all those different kind of things, not to mention how's the IRS actually going to track all this stuff. There's a lot of different rules there that have to be established. So we're looking at probably the second half of 2026 before these accounts will even be accessible. Additionally, while they are age 0 to right before they turn 18, you can only invest in U.S. Based mutual funds and ETFs, right? It's like you can't invest in international. You can't invest in I don't even think right now you could invest in bonds. I think it's just like U.S. equities.
I think it's 100% indexed options as well. So
Okay.
these funds are going to basically be tracking large indexes like the
Yeah.
S&P 500 or the Russell 2000, or like
Gotcha.
you're not going to
Okay.
have, from my understanding from the documentation that we've gotten so far, you're not going to have like super specific individual funds of stocks or international funds or things like that. It's going to be very broad U.S. market-based funds, which are not necessarily bad, but you're going to probably have a little bit less opportunity to really dial in your investment options inside of the accounts.
Yeah, exactly. And then once they do turn 18 though, and you roll that into an applicable retirement account, open season, it's a regular retirement account, invest in whatever you want to invest in, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So still a lot of things to be determined, right, around the actual accounts, how they're going to be administered and all that. We'll see.
We will.
We'll see what happens as time comes. And
I'm trying to be optimistic about them. I mean, we have so many people that come into our office and ask like, "Hey, how do I get a kickstart? Going for my kid?
For my kids.
How do I start saving for their retirement now?" Because we know that time in the market is so valuable. If you throw $100 in for your 1-year-old from 1 to 18. They're going to have so much money by the time they hit 65.
Yeah.
Having that 60, 65 years of time in the market is just going to really set them up for a ton of success.
Yeah.
So we've got so many parents that want to come in and do that for their kids, but the options are limited right now. I'm going to try and be optimistic. I think that these Trump accounts can potentially open up a little bit more flexibility in that avenue and allow parents to kind of plan for their kids' retirement and help kickstart that retirement, whereas before there were a lot of stipulations and things that you kind of had to jump over hurdles through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great opportunity. Every tool has a place, right? If I'm trying to paint a room, a hammer's not the greatest tool, right? So we need to figure out what is the actual purpose, the time for what the savings goal is, and then apply that right tool to it. But I do want to go back just as we close here is reiterate what you said earlier is we got to do our own oxygen mask.
Absolutely.
First. I want to give my kids the world and I'm going to do what I can to give them the best experiences, best opportunities. But a lot of that is not money, right? It's how do we keep the home? How do we maintain a focus on the right education? How do we maintain a good faith focus? How do we maintain health focus? Like those kind of things. And I'll do the money side for adults, being Haley, and then let that be the example that is used. And then if we have margin we can put away and we want to put that money away for them, then we're going to do that. Yeah. But please do not sacrifice your stability and your future to try to provide something for your kids just because you never had it. Yeah. Like that is actually detrimental and sets the wrong example for their success over time.
And I've heard of a lot of people, and I love this idea personally. Obviously, this is not general advice for everyone's scenario, but I really love the idea of your children contributing to their own financial picture and their education and all that kind of stuff. Like, I love parents that say, hey, you know what? I will put 50% up for your first car, but you've got to find the other 50%. So, if we buy a $10,000 car, I'll pay $5,000 of that. But you've got to find $5,000 and put up half of it. Yeah. I love that.
That was how we did it growing up.
Yeah, and I'm very similar. My parents were very big on like, hey, we'll help you, but you've got to also contribute. You've got to earn everything that you get. And I love that model. So this is where kind of those conversations and those ideologies come into play when we're having conversations with people. It's all based on what you want for your kids, how you want to set them up, what kind of participation rate you want them to have in that process. Some parents are like, they're fine. They'll figure it out, and that's fine too. I think it's just dependent on what people's goals are, their kids, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So. Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot of stuff. So we'll wrap it up there. But thank you guys for your time and attention as well. If you have any additional questions, like always, reach out to us. We'd be happy to schedule some time to chat. Make sure to give us a like and 5 stars if you can, and share this with someone who has these same kind of questions. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and neither SmartPro Financial nor Bridgeway Wealth are affiliated.